A voice whispered from the back seat, even though I was alone. The number first caught my attention because it was incongruous. I had been counting the mile markers for hours, a private ritual against the monotony of the road. 34 had slipped past unnoticed. 35 seemed heavier, almost deliberate, like it had been waiting. The highway stretched ahead in a ribbon of black asphalt, framed by dense pines and scrub that blurred into shadow. My headlights cut a narrow swath through the night, reflecting faintly off wet patches where a mist had settled earlier. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. The car felt wrong somehow, too quiet, too still. The engine's hum was steady, reassuring, but my ears caught the small, unmeasurable things. The faint click of the turn signal relay behind the dashboard, the distant drip of water somewhere along the shoulder, the soft sigh of wind moving through the trees. I told myself I was tired. It had been a long drive, longer than usual, but I'd driven this stretch before, alone countless times. Familiar roads should have been a comfort. They were not. The first time I noticed it, a shadow had brushed against the periphery of my vision, low and indistinct, crossing the median as I passed. I had flinched, convinced it was a trick of light or a deer. But then the headlights ahead had caught a branch swaying unnaturally, as if some hidden weight had disturbed it. No wind, no animals. The highway was empty. I adjusted the rearview mirror. Nothing behind me but darkness and the faint reflection of my own face. The night pressed in around the car, tangible, its cold fingers tracing my shoulders. I shivered, though the heater was on. And then I heard it. A whisper, low, almost indecipherable. Something inside the car, but not part of the ambient hum. My chest froze. The words were fragmentary, but clear. Don't look. I jerked my head toward the back seat. Empty. Completely empty. The seatbelt buckles glinted dully in the headlights' reflection. Undisturbed. Hello, I said, voice cracking, half expecting someone to answer. Silence. Only the car and the road. I laughed, sharp and brittle, and muttered to myself, "You're just tired. You're hearing things." The road stretched endlessly. The mile markers ticked by, 36, 37, 38, each passing number dulling my nerves in a way that made my pulse thrum in rhythm with the tires' whisper over the asphalt. Mist clung low to the shoulders, curling around guardrails and creeping toward the lane, washing the headlights into a diffused, uncertain glow. Shadows moved at the edges, shifting shapes that dissolved when I tried to focus. Every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror, a faint shimmer, like heat rising off asphalt, except colder, denser, a distortion rather than a reflection. Each time, my heart skipped a beat, then slowed again when I convinced myself it was just the road, the fog, my imagination. The radio was off, the station I had tried earlier too scratchy and warbling to be useful. Silence pressed in. I found myself listening harder, straining for the faintest creak or sigh. It became impossible not to notice the small details. The subtle vibration of the brake pedal when I wasn't pressing it, the way the air felt heavier on the left side of the cabin, the smell of something faintly metallic in the air. I opened the window slightly, hoping the night would carry it away, but the scent lingered, thin but unmistakable. At 42 miles, I saw it, or thought I did. A figure standing in the median, motionless, pale under the faint glow of a distant streetlight. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. There was no movement, no sound, yet a deep, instinctual certainty gripped me. It was watching. I blinked, and the figure was gone, leaving only the rhythm of the tires and my own ragged breathing. I passed a rest area shortly after, closed for the night. The lights were out, save for one flickering lamppost. I slowed, considering stopping, forcing myself to look around. The asphalt was empty, the trees still, the mist curling unnaturally near the edges of the lot. A lone shadow stretched along the white lines, elongating then shrinking with the sway of my headlights. When I blinked, it was gone. The voice returned, soft and intimate, barely louder than a breath. "Keep driving." I yanked my gaze to the back seat. Again, nothing. I tried the usual rationalizations. Tiredness, stress, sleep deprivation. But the whisper was too coherent, too insistent, too human. By mile 50, the sense of being followed had grown from a flicker of unease into a gnawing dread. The trees along the shoulder leaned in, trunks pressing closer than they should. Shadows pooled under the guardrails, thickening at the edges of my vision. Each curve felt unnatural, the road subtly narrowing or widening as if it had a will of its own. Headlights caught the occasional glint of something low on the asphalt. Nothing I could identify, a rock, a branch, or something that had no right to be there. I forced myself to focus on the dashboard. The clock flickered, 2:17 a.m. steady. The GPS showed the same unbroken line, the same sterile, featureless map. No alternate routes, no exits, just forward. I tried talking aloud to myself, narrating the drive, as if stating facts could anchor me to reality. It's just me. It's only me. The whisper came again, closer, more insistent. Not alone. My hands tightened on the wheel. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror again, expecting, hoping, seeing nothing. And then the subtle signs became impossible to ignore. A crease in the mist, a movement in the shadows behind me that was faster than any branch or animal could move. The feeling that the car's own weight had shifted, imperceptibly, as though something had sat just behind me for a heartbeat, then moved again. I dared not glance over my shoulder, yet I could feel eyes tracing me from the seat I had left empty. The whisper repeated, different this time, urgent, intimate. Look at me. I told myself no. I refused. I drove faster, each mile marker sliding by, 51, 52, 53. The fog thickened, curling over the asphalt, muffling the tires' hiss. Headlights barely pierced it, revealing only the faintest shimmer of guardrails, faint, impossible shapes at the periphery of vision. Mile 54. My pulse throbbed painfully in my temples. The whisper followed me in cadence, rising and falling with the motion of the tires. Don't turn. Then the car shivered beneath me, the wheel tugging slightly. A draft of cold air washed over my neck. My hands, slick with sweat, gripped the wheel so tightly I could see my knuckles blanch. Mile 55. A moment of stillness. The road straightened. The fog parted just enough to see the asphalt ahead. And there it was, a reflection or something like it, in the rearview mirror. Not me, or not exactly me. The shape sat upright in the back seat, head turned toward me. Features obscured, shadowed. Yet there was a familiarity in the tilt of the neck, the slope of the shoulders. My breath caught. You're here, the whisper said. I froze. The tires hummed. The engine continued, faithful. But the world had narrowed to the cabin, the road, and that single presence behind me. I yanked my gaze forward, forcing my eyes to the road. The whisper continued, calm now, patient, almost affectionate. We've been waiting. The final mile marker approached, 35, white against green, suddenly illuminated by a single flickering street lamp that had been absent before. I passed it slowly, dread coiling tight in my stomach. I glanced at the back seat. Empty. I blinked. Twice. 3 times. A cold certainty settled in my chest, heavier than fear, sharper than panic. I leaned back in the seat, trying to reconcile the emptiness with the clarity of the voice, with the glimpses, the subtle movements I had felt all along. And then I realized I had not been alone, not because someone was there now, but because I had never been alone on the road. Each whisper, each movement, each glimmer at the edge of the fog, each mile marker counted not hours of driving, but repetitions, iterations, shadows of myself, watching from the space behind, following the same road, waiting for this moment. A voice whispered from the back seat, even though I was alone. I turned slowly. No one sat there, but the smell, metallic and cold, lingered. And the whisper came again, now unmistakable, echoing inside my own skull. Welcome back. The roadkill I passed lifted its head and watched me go. I noticed it first in the corner of my headlights, a pale, indistinct shape flattened against the asphalt. A raccoon, maybe, or a fox. The smell hit me before the details did. A sharp tang of iron and decay that clawed at the back of my throat. My eyes lingered longer than they should have, following the curve of the road ahead. The highway was empty, absolutely silent except for the low hum of the engine and the faint hiss of tires over wet asphalt. Fog curled along the shoulders, clinging to guardrails and tree trunks, curling upward in slow, deliberate spirals that blurred the edges of the road. It was the kind of night where even the trees seemed to hold their breath. I thought about slowing, but I didn't. There was no reason. The road was straight, empty. Still, something made my hand tremble slightly on the wheel. And then it moved. Not in the way a raccoon might twitch or a fox might stir. The head lifted smoothly, impossibly. Eyes too dark, too reflective, staring directly at me. Not startled, not panicked, not animal aware. Ancient, patient, like it had been waiting for me. I jerked my gaze to the windshield, forcing myself forward. My pulse hammered against my ribs. My mind tried to rationalize. Light playing tricks, a shadow, a reflection of the fog. But the shape stayed. It remained fixed, unblinking, watching me go. The road stretched on, one unbroken line cutting through forest that pressed close on either side. The trees were tall, too uniform, bending inward slightly, their branches brushing together like fingers over the asphalt. The fog thickened. It wasn't just low and drifting anymore. It seemed to rise in vertical walls, swallowing the road ahead and behind, muting the world beyond my headlights. I turned the heat up, hoping warmth would anchor me to reality. My reflection in the rearview mirror stared back, unfamiliar somehow. Eyes too sharp, too alert. The faint metallic taste lingered on my tongue. Ahead, the road split between darkness and a faint shimmer of light cast by a single, flickering street lamp. I focused on that small patch of illumination, trying to will myself forward. Each time I glanced back, the roadkill's head had shifted, tracking me. Subtle movements, just enough to remind me I wasn't imagining it entirely. I passed a broken sign leaning at an impossible angle. Its reflective paint glowed faintly in the headlights. 36. I swallowed hard. The number mirrored the mile marker I had just passed in my journal, written hours ago during this endless drive. The coincidence settled like stone in my chest. The engine's hum began to feel oppressive, vibrating through the seat, the pedals, the steering wheel. The tires whispered against the asphalt in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate, measured. I forced myself to breathe, in and out, slow and steady, but my chest felt hollow, like the fog had pressed inside it. A movement flitted along the edges of the road, branches brushing together, shadows stretching impossibly long, but I refused to look directly. I didn't need to see it to know something was following. Something older than the road, older than the trees, patient and still waiting. The road curved slightly, the fog thickening so that my headlights barely reached past the bend. And then I saw it again, the flattened shape, lying across the center of my lane. But now it was larger, longer. Limbs arranged in ways that should have been impossible. And the head lifted slowly, deliberately. His eyes caught mine. No fear, no aggression, just awareness. And in them I felt recognition, something I couldn't place, something intimate. I gripped the wheel tighter. My knuckles whitened. I thought about swerving, about braking, about stopping entirely. But the road was narrow, the fog thick, and my instinct was frozen, caught between curiosity and dread. I passed it, slowly, eyes locked on mine, and for the first time, I noticed the shape's skin or fur or whatever it was mottled, as if stitched from shadow itself, fading at the edges into the asphalt. No animal I had ever seen moved that way. No living thing I knew could hold still and alive at once, observing. Behind me, silence. Ahead, nothing but fog and asphalt. My pulse echoed in my ears. I tried to speak, to reassure myself, but my voice felt small, swallowed by the fog. Minutes passed, or hours. Time had no meaning here. The road curved and stretched, a river of black winding through trees that seemed to close in, whispering as leaves brushed against each other. Each shadow looked like it might step from the edges, but nothing did. Only the faint, almost imperceptible awareness of being watched. I passed more markers, each number growing heavier. 37, 38. Each mile felt like repetition, like a measure of endurance. The smell of decay lingered faintly in the cabin, metallic and organic. I thought about the roadkill behind me, and suddenly I understood. It had never been alone. Not really. The pattern of the road, the fog, the shadows, they were all deliberate, all calibrated. I noticed then that every marker I had passed seemed to flicker in my memory. Uncertain, doubled. I remembered passing some twice, others out of order. I hadn't been keeping time so much as moving along a loop, a corridor constructed to test me. By mile 40, my hands ached from gripping the wheel. My reflection in the mirror no longer looked like mine. The eyes staring back were sharper, older, knowing. Something in the posture, in the way the shoulders slumped and straightened, suggested memory. Of what, I couldn't say. And then, just as I thought the road would never end, the fog thinned slightly. Ahead I saw shapes. Lined along the asphalt, many of them. Flattened forms, still, their heads lifting to watch as I approached. They weren't animals. Not entirely. Some had features that were wrong, elongated, others barely recognizable. And all of them observed me, patient, ancient, silent. I realized then that the roadkill I had passed at 36 hadn't been alone. None of them were. They were a procession, a ledger of travelers who had come this way before. And I was expected. The whisper came again, from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You're home." I glanced to the back seat. Empty. I turned to the road ahead. Endless. And I felt a certainty that did not belong to me. A memory not mine, though it pulsed inside my chest. I understood finally. I had always been this roadkill. Always waiting. Always watching. Always lifting my head to see who would come next. The headlights swept over the asphalt one last time. I was alone. And yet not alone at all.